The purpose of this video is to cover CipherTrust transparent encryption auditing. Fundamentally, transparent encryption is file encryption with access control and auditing, which is the focus of this topic. Now, we are capable of encrypting raw volumes, but I'm going to set that aside for now and just focus on the nature of encrypting and access control and auditing of files. In my transparent encryption environment, I have two registered clients, one for Linux and one for Windows. And if we look at those clients, we notice they're assigned a client profile. A client profile manages some configure information for that client. Naturally, a client profile can be assigned to more than one CTE client. When you look at the client profile, it controls a number of configuration details for the client, including the client logging configuration, which is where auditing is managed, and whether to send the auditing trail to a syslog server. The first thing to note under the client logging configuration is that the logs can be sent or stored in a number of locations. The default location is log to file, which is essentially a log file for the audit records to be persisted into. I can also upload the log files to the Key Manager or CipherTrust Manager, so they are visible at that location as well. In addition to location, I can also control the log level that's being persisted to the log file or uploaded to the CipherTrust Manager. By default, the logging level is error. So if you look at the logging levels, it's a hierarchy, meaning if I choose to log errorless messages, that means I will capture both error as well as fatal. If I choose to audit informational message, I will receive info, warning, error, and fatal records that rise to that level. To note, when you look at auditing of transparent encryption policy enforcement, a deny audit record is an error message, but a permit audit record is only informational. So if I want to see both denies and permits per my policy configuration, then I need to up the auditing level to informational. Once I've chosen my auditing level, I can also remove extraneous records. For example, if I have a process that does an open file and then many reads, that could be an event for the open, and for every read of the file would generate a separate audit event. And then of course when the process is done, it can close the file. Well, if I only want the unique behavior, which would be the open and the read and the close, then I can turn on concise logging, which would give me the unique information that I'm looking for without many extraneous duplicates of records. Let's take a look at some of these audit records. First, we need to set up the environment to make sure we can collect the ones we want to see. I'm going to change the overall log level to info so we can see permit audits. I'm also going to upload the audit records to the CipherTrust Manager, but only if they're error. And then on the local host into the log file, I'm going to collect info to allow us to collect both permit audits as well as deny audits. Click Update to effect the change. Let's go out to our server and create a directory and put some data in it to work with. I'm going to make a directory just called /mydata off the root, and I'm going to change the OS permissions to globally read write and change for everyone. So there's no OS controls at all. So any access control will be based on the security managed policy that's going to be applied to this directory. I'm going to create a file in that directory called hello.txt with the hello world into that directory. So if I look at that file, I can see it just has a little bit of information. Go back out to CipherTrust Manager, and let's take a quick look at my policy that I'm going to apply. Policy is called test policy, is the name of the policy. And the policy has 3 rules. Rule number 1, and rules are always evaluated in order. Rule number 1 is for the key operation. Action is the type of I/O, whether that be file open, file read, file write. Key operation is a special I/O type that's unique to the read key of data, and it's only for us. So initial encryption or key rotation, rule number 1 is just for the use of data transformation. Rule number 2 says this user set called trusted users. In this user set, there is one user called Joe with no other criteria. So it's just if the uname that is performing the I/O operation is Joe, then this user set applies, regardless of what group they're a part of or if it's an LDAP user or not. It's just is the name of the user running whatever the process is, performing the I/O operation, is the user Joe, then this user set will apply. And when I apply that user for all I/O operations, we're going to permit and apply the key and generate an audit record. I generally prefer that trusted users and groups, we don't have an audit record, but that depends on the situation. If it's not Joe, it will not meet rule number 2. It will fall to number 3, which is our catch-all rule, which is deny an audit. So the only thing that has access to the data protected by this policy is the user Joe. We'll go out to my server. We're going to select the policy that we just analyzed. And we're going to apply this to the My Data directory. So this is the list of directories we're going to apply it to. We're going to add and create the guard point. We're going to give this a second and let the guard point go active. And once our guard point is active, it'll automatically rekey the data. The guard point is now active and the data is rekeyed. Let me open up another window for that server. So I'm logging into the server as root. Go to the var log directory. There's a vormetric directory for the client. If we look at the audit records or audit log files, or excuse me, the log files, the one we are interested in for the audit trail is this one right here, which is vorvmd_root.log. And we will simply tail and follow that log. And we can already see some audit trails or audit records in there. Let me do that again, make it a little easier to read. And we can see the policy was applied, the rekey took place, and so this is just the activity going on in that environment. You see that there's a timestamp and some informational, and then of what the record log level for that event is also shown. Let me go back out to my host. So now I'm on the use server 1, and let's as root try to look at that data. We'll move that down here so we can see it actually happen in real time. So we'll do just what we did earlier. We'll cat the hello text file, and you notice that I get a permission denied. Oops. And you can see that I get a audit event that says user root using the cat process did a read attribute on my text file, and the outcome was it was denied. So we can see everything, all the criteria of the I/O, user and groups if there were different groups, the kind of I/O and the process that was used to perform the action and the outcome. Well, let's use Joe. So I'm going to log into the same server as Joe. And I'm going to use a utility like strings. And Joe can see the data. Let's go out and look at the audit trail again. And I didn't have an additional audit record that says, timestamp of course, user test policy for user Joe using strings performed a read file on the file, and the effect was it was permitted. So now that I have audit records, all these audit records are being stored locally, and the deny or the error audit records are being uploaded to the CipherTrust Manager. Remember, the permit audit is an informational message, right? So this is info type here, right? Well, the deny audit is an error. Before we take a look at the audit records on the CipherTrust Manager, we need to know which CipherTrust Manager to query. The audit record or audit trail is only uploaded to one of the CipherTrust managers. To check the status, there's a command called vmsec status, and we'll simply grep for upload. And notice that the uploaded trail is actually going to the second node of our cluster. It's generally the first node of the cluster, but I was testing HA earlier, and therefore the upload is going to the second node. So let's take a quick look there. So we'll go to CM Server 2. And on the CipherTrust Manager, we'll go to Records and Loki Audit Records. And we want the client records. And if you notice the client records, we can see that they were transmitted from which client. In this case, our userver1 client. And here's the event. And we can see the same information from the audit log file is also available on CipherTrust Manager. Now that we can see both audit records both within the log file and CipherTrust Manager, the recommended path is to send the audit trail directly to either a syslog server or a SIEM tool. To do that, let's go back to the transparent encryption profile. And that's covered under syslog configuration. You specify what level you want to send the information, and then what is the server and port number of the syslog server or SIEM tool. In this case, I'm going to set the log level to info and my syslog server. And the port is 1468, and a message format is going to be plain text. Depending on what your syslog server or your SIEM tool you'll choose a different message format for it to parse. Let's update, and we need to enable in the configuration for client login configuration syslog. We must turn that on, and then update as well. Now let's go generate a few audit trail records to look at. And you can see they're being populated. And here's an audit record with root, tried to use strings, the file, and on hello.txt. And if this had been a SIEM tool, then you can generate alerts and events that you can take action on. But this is just a simple syslog server, so it's just recording the events. And that's all there is to it.